On December 31st, 1975, 670 workers walked out of a Vancouver factory for the last time. Hayes Manufacturing had spent over 50 years building Canada's toughest trucks, machines engineered to survive terrain that snapped American imports in half. They hit record production just 4 years before everything shut down. The official cause was a global recession. A former Hayes executive called it something far more deliberate. In the spring of 1920, Douglas Hayes and W.E. Anderson registered a new company in Vancouver, aiming to supply trucks for British Columbia's booming logging camps. The challenge was immediate. Imported American trucks, built for highways and gentle farmland, broke down within weeks on the North Shore's primitive logging roads. Newspaper headlines tallied axle failures, 37 in a single season, while insurance claims piled up for snapped frames and twisted drivetrains. The terrain was relentless: steep, muddy grades, sharp switchbacks, and loads that pushed machinery to the edge. Hayes saw this not as a setback, but as a blueprint. He sketched a prototype chassis that year, experimenting with heavier steel, wider axles, and a geometry designed to flex with the land instead of fighting it. By June 1922, the first in-house prototype rolled out for a 3-day test on the logging roads. Field logs documented the run. No axle breaks, no catastrophic failures, just a battered but intact machine. For the first time, a truck built in Canada had survived what the imports could not. This was not just a technical victory. It was a declaration that local engineering could outlast anything shipped in from the South. Hayes Manufacturing was officially incorporated that year, setting the stage for a company that would come to define toughness on its own terms. The partnership that launched Hayes Manufacturing did not last the decade. In March 1928, W.E. Anderson resigned, his name quietly removed from the letterhead, just as the company was preparing for its next act. The timing was critical. Timber exports from British Columbia were surging, and the company faced a crossroads: scale up or be left behind. Investors stepped in with new capital, fueling an ambitious move. Hayes Manufacturing secured a 25,000-square-foot facility on West 2nd Avenue, a leap from the cramped quarters of their early years. The new plant was more than just floor space. It was a statement of intent, with room for expanded assembly lines, heavier equipment, and a dedicated engineering office. The company rebranded, dropping Anderson's name and forging a single identity around Douglas Hayes. Despite the internal fracture, the business pressed forward. The larger plant and fresh investment set the stage for a technical leap that would soon redefine what a logging truck could be in the wilds of the Pacific Northwest. In October 1933, Hayes Manufacturing filed a U.S. patent, number 1,985,642, that would rewrite the rules for heavy-duty trucking in North America. The engineering team, drawing on the relentless demands of British Columbia's forests, devised a diesel-powered dual-axle system with a planetary gearbox mounted directly beneath the engine. This wasn't just a new drivetrain. It was a leap past the chronic failures that plagued single-axle trucks on steep, muddy logging grades. Internal test reports from the period documented a 35% reduction in stress on the drivetrain, using 4,140 alloy steel and custom load-sharing bearings, a figure soon cited by the American Society of Mechanical Engineers. The innovation allowed Hayes trucks to haul heavier loads farther into the timber, where roads were little more than ruts in the earth. By the late 1930s, The company was not only building trucks, but also diversifying into buses, striking a distribution deal with Leyland in 1938. The dual-axle patent gave Hayes a decisive edge, proof that Canadian engineering could outthink and outlast anything else on the continent. In 1946, Hayes Manufacturing struck a deal with Lawrence, aiming to unite two regional forces in British Columbia's heavy truck market. The merger brought new capital and a wave of optimism, but it also exposed deep divisions inside the boardroom. Within a year, 3 senior managers, Harold Hal Thompson, Marion Wells, and Samuel Ortega, walked out, each carrying a different grievance. Board minutes from January and March 1947 record their departures. Thompson, who had built Hayes's North American dealer network, left over disputes about U.S. export strategy. Wells, the chief engineer, was frustrated by stalled research budgets. Ortega, the finance director, clashed with the board over the timing of a new Vancouver plant. Their exit was more than a personnel shakeup. It set off a chain reaction. That same spring, the trio registered a new company, Pacific Truck and Trailer, directly across town. The Pacific Truck Charter, filed in June 1947, made it clear the era of a unified British Columbia truck front was over. Competition wasn't just coming from the South anymore. A local arms race had begun, with both sides racing to build the next generation of heavy-duty machines for the forests and mountains. By the early 1960s, the Hayes name had become shorthand for brute strength in the logging camps and mines of the Pacific Northwest. The release of the HDX series in 1962 set a new standard for what a heavy-duty truck could endure. Its frame, built from high-strength, low-alloy steel, weighed 28% less than the previous generation, but carried 30% more payload. The modular power unit, an engineering marvel, let mechanics swap out a diesel engine in half a day, keeping trucks on the move in places where downtime meant disaster. On the factory floor in Vancouver, nearly 600 workers kept the assembly lines humming, welding, riveting, and fitting each truck to the exacting demands of customers who hauled 100-ton loads up mountain switchbacks and through coastal rainforests. Orders came in from as far as Alaska and the Yukon, each truck custom-built for terrain where failure was not an option. In logging towns and mining camps, the HDX became a legend. Mechanics swore by its welded box chassis, and drivers boasted about surviving wrecks that would have destroyed lesser rigs. At its height, Hayes was more than just a manufacturer. It was a symbol of regional pride, a collective achievement forged in steel and sweat, and the toughest truck empire Canada had ever seen. In 1969, Hayes Manufacturing entered a new era under the shadow of American corporate power. Max Trucks, a heavyweight in the industry, acquired a controlling 52% stake for a price of $12 million. The deal was pitched as a partnership, but the terms left no doubt about who would call the shots. Max supply chain managers arrived in Vancouver, bringing new procedures and a shift in priorities. The Hayes name remained on the plant gates, but decisions now traveled south before reaching the shop floor. At first, the numbers looked like vindication. Production surged, output surged to 500 trucks a year, a record for the company. In 1971, a single rebrand order dwarfed anything Hayes had seen before, filling the assembly lines with Mac Hayes badges destined for export. Yet beneath the surface, the company's independence was slipping away. Custom orders gave way to standardized builds. Local suppliers found their contracts replaced by Mac's network. The plant that once built trucks to survive the wilds of British Columbia was now an outpost for a foreign agenda. The surge in volume masked a deeper loss. The control that had defined Hayes for half a century was gone, replaced by distant oversight and a new set of priorities that would soon steer the company toward an uncertain fate. On March 18, 1974, the boardroom doors closed on a deal that would decide Hayes Manufacturing's fate. PACCAR, already a dominant force in North American trucking, paid $22 million in cash to acquire the last of Hayes's assets. The contract went further than a simple sale. Buried in the legal language was a non-compete clause. Hayes was barred from building heavy-duty trucks for a decade. PACCAR's lawyers insisted on strict terms. The legendary Signal Gearmatic torque converter line, once the backbone of Hayes's engineering edge, was stripped from the balance sheet and sold off to a GM-led group. The transaction didn't just transfer factories and equipment. It erased the last competitive threat to Kenworth, PACCAR's crown jewel. On paper, the rationale was efficiency. In reality, the contract locked the doors on nearly 60 years of Canadian truck-building independence, sealing Hayes's fate before the final shift even ended. On December 31, 1975, the gates at Hayes Manufacturing's Vancouver plant closed for the last time. The press release, issued that morning, made the decision sound inevitable. Declining orders, a shrinking market, the global recession. But the numbers told a different story. 675 workers lost their jobs overnight. Many of them second-generation welders and machinists who built trucks tough enough for the mountains and mines of British Columbia. The last. Hayes rolled off the line with no ceremony, its serial number logged and filed away. In the days that followed, a rumor spread through the empty plant. One former executive, who asked not to be named, called it a kill order from Kenworth. He claimed the shutdown wasn't about market conditions at all, but about removing a rival that had proven too resilient. Whether fact or legend, the accusation lingers. Hayes wasn't simply outcompeted. It was erased. Today, the Hayes name survives only in rusting hulks and collectors' hands, a legacy erased from Canada's industrial memory. As global giants swallow local innovators, the question lingers. Was this collapse inevitable or engineered? What we lose in silence isn't just machines, but the grit that built them.